Wait for it. There it is.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Two Trees Podcast, the podcast that brings you the impeccable movie taste of John Dillon.
It is impeccable.
And the ever movie critic, Rose Moeller.
Of questionable judgment.
You guys have recommended two movies, and I have disliked both of them.
They were both good
They
movies.
were both fantastic.
They're not the best movies, but they were good.
One's up there. But anyway, and also myself, Martin Listener, the official intro man of the Two Trees Podcast, at least for Season 3, which is rapidly approaching an end.
Yeah, that's true. We're
I assume.
cooking.
We are over 2/3 of the way done with the year, almost 3/4 if my math is correct. In fact,
Mathing.
it is actually fall outside now, so the seasons are changing, but the gospel remains the same.
That was nice.
Yeah, the one that we are preaching and also the one that we're going through, which is Matthew on
Oh,
this. So
that works on many levels.
We love that you guys are listening to us. We love that you engage with us through our Facebook page, the Two Trees Podcast. It's just search the Facebook little magnifying glass thing there, and you'll find us. Like us. Doesn't cost anything to do so. There's a lot of extra information that John passes along, and we have a few people that are basically moderators, I guess, if you want to consider them that. They post a lot of extra information also. So join us on there. Also go to our website, thetwotreespodcast.org, O-R-G, the T-W-O treespodcast.org. I only spell two because it's the only one I know how to spell. People think it's to decipher the number and the like the numeric in the word. But no, it's thetwotreespodcast.org. Go on there, see everything we've ever done, get us a little bit more information about us. And you can also buy us a coffee, kind of a new way if you want to support the channel. That's what all the hipster people on YouTube say. If you want to support us, you can give us a little donation on there. We don't want to beg for anything, but it does help
But we
keep
do
us
love coffee.
rolling along. John runs on, what was it, Bible and caffeine?
Jesus and caffeine.
Exactly. So he definitely needs his caffeine. So buy us a coffee on there if you would like. That's what helps bring us on the air, as nothing is free in this world, and we like to keep this as free as we can. But it never hurts to get a little extra support along the way.
In the way of caffeine.
The best way to support us, though, is to share this with a friend, whether in person or through your social medias, online. Send it to somebody, share some with somebody, and also leave us a comment or a post or a review if you're looking on the
That really is the best way.
Apple iTunes.
If you are looking for a way to say thank you, leave us a review, especially on Apple iTunes. That moves us into other people's way, and they see it because you are clicking on the button, and if you write something, those kind of things, the internet loves that, and the algorithm says, this is good.
When you tell the algorithm we are good, it wants other people to know how good we are, so it sends it out to them as well. So we appreciate it. Even if you leave a review on like one of your favorite movies, such as The Emperor's New Groove or something like that,
Or The Fountain of Youth.
Double thumbs
you
down.
could also do that as well. We would
How
appreciate
you could possibly be a double thumbs down. It's a good movie.
Wait, which one?
Crunk.
Both.
The,
Yes.
The
no,
Emperor's New Groove is classic.
I was
Yeah,
not.
it's pretty
I
good.
I'm sorry. I fell asleep. I
don't know how that's possible. I laughed through
Well,
that whole movie.
I don't know how you can fall asleep in the middle of a movie and still critique it as much as she has.
That's true.
You haven't even seen half of it.
I fell asleep in the middle and I shut it off before it was over.
But you came in with like guns blazing about how it
Yes.
was not a good movie.
Yes.
You guys asked. In my defense, I did not come in and say I hated that movie. You
Did we
said,
ask?
"What did you think?"
I said,
And
"What'd you
was
think
like,
about the
"Oh,
movie?"
it's
'Cause we made such a big
it's little- I don't
deal.
like
So
it."
he asked.
And yet again, the two thumbs down routine.
One
and all
for
of
Fountain
that.
of Youth.
Well, our
one for
listeners
Emperor's New
know
Groove.
better. They know
That's
that
right.
The Emperor's New Groove and Crunk in particular is a national treasure.
We should put a poll up on the Facebook. Do we know how to make polls? Maybe we could figure that out. I think
I'm sure I can.
Is it a good movie? Yes or no? And everybody vote on it.
Because
and we
that
will
has
see.
deep theological implications.
Well, it does.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
really.
No,
There's
I'm
good
for
and
it.
there's evil.
There's good and
Yes.
evil.
Yeah.
Which side are you on?
And the movie is
Roses
good, and
or
hating
Jesus?
the movie
No,
is
no.
evil.
Not at all what I meant. I meant Yasmin and
There's no yes, but
But you
even know the
characters.
unbelievable. Let's talk
Unreal.
about
You
the
didn't take
Bible
notes.
because we're not
Okay.
getting anywhere here.
Exactly.
If you've got your Bibles, go ahead and open them up to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22 is where we're going to be. And we are past the moment where Jesus has entered into Jerusalem. And the cycle of stories is now geared towards the cross. It's not something far off in the distance. Things begin to happen rapidly once you move into the orbit of the group of people called the Sadducees. They are mean and violent people. The peoples of the ancient world. We talked about this in the Between the Testaments series, but all of that information, if you've listened to that, you are going to be well prepped for what we're going to look at today. Because when Jesus went into the temple, the entire community of Jerusalem erupted into action. There wasn't room for people to have mixed or not mixed, but like to say, well, I'm not sure how I feel about him. He seemed
Like
to
neutral.
there wasn't much lukewarmness. People were either afraid of him or very supportive of him. And he doesn't seem to have really stirred up people's reactions in a mild way. And he does this on purpose, especially inside of the temple, because this is still today dangerous ground to do anything. If you go to the Temple Mount today, they prep you way in advance about what you can do, what you can't do, what you can wear, where you can go, and just being there is uncomfortable. Rose, your husband really disliked.
Yeah,
being up
Jeremy
there.
was extremely uncomfortable when we were on Temple Mount. I didn't have the same, apprehension or just uncomfortableness that he did. I don't know if he's more spiritually aware than I am, or if there was something going on that I was just not picking up. But he has still talks about how much that was just. He's like, I would never go back up there again.
I enjoyed my time up there, but I'm oblivious to a lot of things, and
Same.
that may be. But Jeremy definitely talked to us quite a bit afterwards. But even in Jesus's day, if something happened in the temple, it had the ability to spark an international incident. Later on, when the Apostle Paul visits the temple, and people think he's brought Timothy with him into the temple, someone who's a Gentile, people freaked out and they went ballistic. And Jesus has gone into the temple and flipped the tables and driven out the money changers. And so what happens is now he's not out in the edges of the empire. He's not in Galilee. He's not on the fringes of the world. He is in the heart of Israel. And the powerful people gather around him to try to exert their power, their prestige, or to maybe see if they can recruit him to their cause. And what Matthew does in this chapter is he's going to break down several confrontations that people have with Jesus and how he responds to them. In particular, he's going to meet the Herodians, he's going to meet the Pharisees, he's going to meet the Sadducees. He doesn't meet any Essenes because they are all hiding out in the wilderness waiting for the world to end. That's kind of what they were doing. But the Romans, right, the Herodians, they are incredibly powerful, but he is in the backyard, the home turf of the Sadducees. And when I read this, I can't help but think of a character from Christian church history, and he's a man named Athanasius. Athanasius is a 4th century figure. He was the bishop of Alexandria, and he was so powerful in his defense of orthodoxy. He stood against a heresy called Arianism, which is the idea that the Son began to exist. He is a created being. And everyone around him seemed to be supporting this idea, and Athanasius refused to. And one day there was a group of people who came to him and they said, Athanasius, the world is against you. And he said, then I am against the world. And so we've kind of attached this idea of contra mundum to this heroic stance. But Jesus was doing it long before Athanasius was. All of these peoples have created the world that Jesus has been ministering in. It is the world as they have shaped it. For centuries, these people have wielded power in Israel, and they have not left it a brighter, safer, more lovely place. And they are all still squabbling over the scraps from the table, trying to rise in wealth and power. And I really like this chapter because you're able to see the gospel of the kingdom of God right next to the way that people were thinking in the world of the first century. And it enables me also to take that same mentality and set it up against the principles that dominate the world in which I live today. And so this isn't just to record a historical event. It's to prepare the follower of Jesus to know that if you are going to follow the kingdom of heaven, you are not going to be comfortable in the systems of this world. Doesn't matter what political party or what country you're in, the things of the kingdom of heaven will be resisted by the darkness, by the spiritual powers in the heavenly places. And so what does it look like? And so what you're going to see here are these three groups of people: the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. And they all hate each other passionately. In the Bible, reading the Gospels, we have a tendency to just kind of pretend they're all the same. Like a Pharisee and a Sadducee is pretty much the same thing, except for they are mortal enemies. They're about as different as you could possibly be. The Sadducees are the most powerful group. There's not as many of them, but they are super wealthy. They are a group of families that control the Temple Mount. They claim descent going back to the high priest of the original temple, a man named Zadok. And so that's where the name comes from, Zadokim or Sadducees. And they are violent. They operate kind of in a mafia-like way. They're selling access to businesses on the Temple Mount, and if you want to play, you have to pay. And they are deeply attached to the temple itself. So in 70 AD, when the temple is destroyed, the Sadducees don't really move beyond that. They aren't a system that exists after the destruction of the temple, because everything about their movement is about the temple. You don't really need to love God. You just need to do the right rituals in the right place. And that will make you good in the eyes of God. That's what it means to be part of the kingdom of heaven.
So the Sadducees were about ritual. What were the Pharisees about?
The Pharisees are also very much about ritual, because both of these groups are deeply impacted by the ideas of Greece, of Hellenism. And one of the implications of Hellenism was that success and power is based on ritual. You need to do these things in the right way at the right time if you want God's blessing. And so the Pharisees are much more traditional. They have two Torahs that they hold up. One of them is the written Torah. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And they are passionate about these books. But they also have something called the oral Torah, which later on is going to be codified and written down. But it is kind of a this is how we've always done it set of rules. And so if you want God to bless the nation, you not only have to do the rules that he wrote down, but you have to do them the way that our ancestors have taught us to do these things. And so they're going to clash all the time with the Sadducees. And the Sadducees murdered hundreds and hundreds of Pharisee families, so much so that the movement fled up into Galilee and started their own community along the Sea of Galilee.
I remember talking about this last year when we did the intertestamental period, but it seems to me that if ritual is important to both of them, they could at least bond over that a little bit. But it sounds like it causes more conflict because my ritual and your ritual is not the same.
That's right. It really was about who gets to decide what the rituals are. Ultimately, it's not so much about ritual as much as it is about power. Who is the boss? Which is why it's so sad that the disciples on the way up to Calvary are arguing about the very same thing. Which of us is the greatest? You remember Jesus says, bring me a random kid, set him up here. This person outranks you because he is innocent and is lowly. And the kingdom of heaven does not operate in the same way that the kingdoms of the earth operate.
But that's kind of what you mentioned at the very beginning when we were talking about how it differentiates you from the rest of the world. The only way that us humans can understand creation is through a ranking system of some kind. We even have, the food chain. We even have, even the way that we understand biology and science as a whole is as a ranking system. There is certain things that are greater than others, more powerful than others, better than others, however you want to say it. And then we rank and file them through species, through kingdom, through philo, through all this stuff. And so the only way that I think that we can understand creation is by putting emphasis on who is more important, who has more power, who has more control, and who is the servant.
Yeah, and I think we are ill-prepared to even enter into this discussion because it isn't that there isn't rank in the kingdom of heaven. God is God, and we are not. He is enthroned above all. It's that the way you pursue these things is totally different. I don't pursue them by accumulating power. I pursue it by loving my neighbor. By serving, I am ruling.
By taking what he's given you and using it for others instead of for yourself.
Yeah, and that's the idea of the shepherd, that the shepherd is to protect and defend the sheep. That is his function. The sheep aren't there to make sure the shepherd has a good day. It's the other way around. And so the ancient world is not used to that style of power at all. Even today, we're not used to that style of power at all. And Jesus is going to go face to face with representatives of each of these groups. And the Bible doesn't name any of them. Their names are stripped away, almost in like a Pharaoh of Egypt kind of a way. So Matthew is purposefully setting this up, not so that he can rub someone's name out, but so that he can get you to look at this through the lens of opposing worldviews. Does this answer the question? And is Jesus up to the challenge? And the answer is yes. So let's look at verse 15 of chapter 22 and read down to about verse 22.
Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and that you do not care about anyone's opinion.
Can we just stop there? What lies!
Well, it feels like a trap.
It's totally a trap.
They're gaslighting.
They gathered together and they plotted how to entangle him with their words. And their very first thing they do is lie. We know that you come from God. Well, I hope you're lying, because if you do know that he comes from God and your plan is to entangle him with his words, then you're just straight up serving the devil. This is a really clarifying moment for me because it shows me that they are operating dishonestly. That if they are going to recognize this person is an enemy, I will destroy them by any means necessary to bring about their destruction. Did you catch that it's the Pharisees and the Herodians?
Yes, it says they sent their disciples to him. So they didn't even make an appearance themselves. They just sent along some students.
Yeah,
some
students.
followers.
Well, this would have been common. It's to us like to think like the Pharisees are more than just the teachers, the guys, the card-carrying Pharisees. A lot of families would have been considered Pharisee families or Sadducee families or Herodian families. It's kind of just pointing out the direction that those people leaned politically and philosophically and those kinds of things. But yeah, they are being sent as representatives from an unseen source. And they are confronting Jesus in a very real way. These people are also being sent by an unseen force to confront Jesus. And so they aren't the masters of the story that they think that they are, but they are being manipulated by the spiritual powers in the heavenly places. And so the Herodians and the Pharisees, this is a weird gathering. The Pharisees don't like Herod at all. Herod put a giant Roman eagle on the temple and started a riot. The Pharisees are used to fighting with the Herodians. Now they are joining forces to check the influence of this Jesus character. Keep going.
I'm going to start here again. Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us, then, what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away.
There was a giant revolt violent upheaval when Herod the Great put a Roman eagle on the temple that he was building. Because the Bible tells us not to make any graven images. And the Roman eagle wasn't just a logo, it was in many ways a god. There were priests to it, there were offerings made to it. It would have had its own little temple that people who would guard it. Not to the same extent as like the regular gods of Rome, but they honored this thing, and it was considered to be idolatrous. And so when the Pharisees found out about this, there was a student of the Pharisees who climbed up there and tore the thing down. It resulted in death and violence and Roman troops and all kinds of shenanigans. But at the heart of this controversy was, what about carved images? Should we be carrying around carved images of the gods? Now, most people would have had portable gods that they carried around with them. But if you think about coins, they are a powerful means of propaganda and of showing your face to the world that will never see you, right? If you want to know what did Julius Caesar look like, they're probably never going to run into Julius Caesar, but they would see him on a coin. And so Roman coins were not just a piece of metal. They were designed to impact and to influence the world around them. And usually Roman coins have the faces of either the emperor or a god on the coins. And so they bring this up. And so even though they're not talking about the Roman eagle, they're talking about the Roman eagle and this background that took place during the Second Temple period. The issue is whether or not it is kosher for us to use the monies of a pagan world. In particular, the coin that's used for the temple tax, every male was supposed to pay a temple tax. Later on, Peter and Jesus are kind of brought up on this, and Peter gets the temple tax out of the fish's mouth. But there was a coin called the Tyrian, because it comes from Tyre, shekel. And on one side of it is the face of Hercules. And on the other side of it is... I forget what's on the other side.
Cusco.
I think it's actually the eagle, the Roman eagle. And so what you've got here is that is the coin that goes into the temple treasury. Is the temple storing up little images of false gods? Because Hercules was being worshipped as false gods. Now, the Herodians would have thought this is a good thing. We need to blend together Israeli faith and the pagan faith and come together with this syncretic concept. And the Pharisees would have been, whoa, absolutely not. We need to print our own coins, and none of this stuff, those need to be melted down and restruck. And so this is an issue that is going to, if there was 24-hour news cycles back then, this is the kind of thing that you would have had pundits on TV talking about. And so they bring him up. Is it lawful? And this doesn't mean is it lawful in the sense of legal. This means, is it in keeping with God's word to pay taxes to Caesar? And what Jesus does is absolutely brilliant because he asks a question worth asking. He's going to bring them, and he asks them, bring me the coin. And there is another coin, not the Tyrian shekel, but a penny that's called the tribute penny. And I don't mean penny like it's worth 1 cent. I mean, this is a single coin. It was a small coin. And on one side of it is the face of Tiberius Caesar. And on the back is a random person lounging on a throne. But the words that are on the shekel, and it's called the tribute penny, because it is the coin that you use to pay taxes to Caesar. The words on it said, Caesar Augustus Tiberius, son of the divine Augustus. You would see how a kosher Jewish person would have a problem carrying money around that said that the Roman emperor was a god and the son of a god. And so if Jesus says, yes, pay the tax, the Pharisees are going to lose it and try to stone him. And if Jesus says, no, it's not lawful, the Herodians are going to declare him a traitor to Rome and try to have him put to death. So whether he says yes or no, someone is going to try to murder him.
And those two someones came together.
Then they came together to set this trap. It's a brilliant trap, if you think about it. And they didn't assume that there was another answer. And so they asked. Jesus asks them, bring me the coin. And Jesus said, whose likeness? And notice he points out, and inscription. What did the inscription say? It said that
who it is.
Yeah, it says who it is and that he's God. Right? This should have resulted in Jesus saying, see this? This is idolatry. I reject this. Let's get some nice Bible verses on there. We still have this issue in America. Every couple of years, people get upset about, does it say in God we trust on the money and those kinds of things. So this hasn't gone away. It just shifts its focus in the way that it looks. If he had the coin, which he doesn't seem to have, he asks them, bring me a coin. Now, who is it that brings him the coin?
They.
Do you think those Pharisees, with all their wealth and power, owned any money? Because I guarantee they did. This is hypocrisy. How are you going to murder somebody for having money that you have in your bank account at home, but you're going to make a political point about it? The Herodians, for sure, would have been all about this. But it says they, implying that both of these groups are willingly, and they bring the coin forward. And Jesus turns this around by focusing not on what it says. The coin is moot. He says, I want to talk about the image. The purpose of a coin is to show power and the likeness of a ruler to the people. It's never the king looking ridiculous. It's always like his best side, at a particular angle. And Americans, our money is largely based on Roman concepts and art. And so our stuff would look very familiar to them. We are, in many ways, creating an image that we want to last. And ancient Romans knew the same thing. We, though, Jesus is saying, are like the coins. We are to image not the God of Rome, but the God of heaven. He says, whose image is this? And they tell him, oh, it's Caesar. How do you know? Well, first of all, it says that it's Caesar. And Jesus says, then give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And then he changes the whole thing, but give to God what is God's. This is the question worth asking. This is the direction that the kingdom of heaven is moving. Not is this money allowed to be used, but what are you made for? As a coin is struck to image and to show the power and glory of the king, so humanity was crafted of the dirt and breathed into and given the breath of life and told that we are to image God.
Well, even when they hear it, they marvel. Like, they're like, well, that didn't work out. Martin, brace yourself. I'm going to use a sports analogy. Okay? It reminds me a little bit of when you go to, I'm going to say a volleyball game, because I go to volleyball games sometimes. And you are there cheering for your team. Mm-hmm. And then the other team makes a really good play. And you're like, in spite of myself, I must clap. That was pretty good. Is this how they're feeling at this moment?
Yeah. I think so. They're amazed. They are not just, but I think they're also thinking about what he said. Mm-hmm. Have we been arguing about dumb stuff? Well, that can't possibly, but I think it actually may be the point here. And Jesus has brought this up. The coin is, and he doesn't really engage in the argument. Instead, he's talking about a much bigger one. Why is it that you, the coin, the human, who bear the image of God, are focused on not bearing the image? And it is this concept of bearing the image of God. You are to be like him, to bear fruit, to represent. And we would do this with a coin. Like, if the coin comes out and it makes the king look ridiculous, they're not passing those out. They're going to restrike them. But we have this idea that God just better be happy with us the way that we are. And we'll, I showed up for church on Sunday, and so God, you owe me some blessings this week because I've been a good boy, like as though he's Santa Claus checking his list. And that's not at all the case.
I just look at the way that Jesus handles the question, and I find myself in kind of precarious situations like this more and more frequently as I become of age to have to deal with more people, where there are two sides to something, and each side wants to know which way they're correct. I think this is so important when we read the books or the letters that Paul writes as well. Paul says himself, imitate me the way I imitate Christ. I think a lot of people take that as Paul was such a good, sinless man once he turned to God that we have to try to strive to be as good as him. What Paul does is he dealt with people on the same thing, with two different sides of a coin, and they're both asking the same question, and he is darned if he does, darned if he doesn't, if I can say that on the podcast. And Jesus is in the same way. But Jesus completely flips the script around and says, your question is dumb. Here's what you should be thinking of. I think Paul does a fantastic job doing that as well. Your question is dumb. Here's what you need to refocus your thought on. And there's very, very few times in my life that I have approached a situation saying, your question is really dumb. Here's what we should be focused on.
And if you look at it, the way that Jesus goes about it is actually very, very carefully done.
Right.
He doesn't call them stupid. He doesn't call them names. He doesn't have, which he's not above that. Like he's called them both out before. Instead, what he does is he asks a question, knowing that if they are willing to listen, this will change them. And it says they do. They are amazed at what he says. This is a declaration of the wisdom of God.
That is so important that he engages in conversation with them first. I think a lot of times you see this, and especially like you mentioned, if you're watching pundits about anything, whether it's sports, politics, or whomever, it's one side trying to convince the other side why they need to change what they're doing, and the other side doesn't care to listen with what you're saying. The same way you don't care to listen about what they're trying to teach you or tell you. But Jesus, through this interaction here, asks them a question and they respond. It's a gentle way of getting their attention and saying, do you really want to know an answer? Or do you just want me to say the wrong thing?
So let's hypothetically go back to the scenario that they're really asking about, this Roman eagle that was on the temple. If they took the temple apart, right, and they got rid of that Roman eagle, would Israel be a godly place?
No.
The answer is no. That's just window dressing. There is a much deeper problem that they're dealing with. But this is where they are spending their energy. It is on the, and this isn't gone. This is the heartbeat of Christianity as I know it today. We major on the minors violently. And if you don't believe me, just go get on any kind of theology chat group, and it will real quickly not remind you of Jesus in any way. There's one group that doesn't seem to have any opinion about truth at all, and there's another group who just loves to be mean. And there's 50 other groups beside that. But it is not focused on the primary goal of showing the image of God. The next group that comes after him is a group called the Sadducees, and it picks up in verse 23.
The same day Sadducees came to him, who say that there is no resurrection, and they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses said if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring of his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no offspring, left his wife to his brother. So too the second and third, down to the 7th. After them all the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, of the 7th, whose wife will she be? For they all had her.
So what are the odds that this actually happened?
My favorite type of hypothetical.
Yeah, it's pretty slim. I don't think this is a true story. But what they're trying to do is to mock the Pharisees. In the background of this question is something that Matthew points out. The same day, Sadducees came to him, and then it tells you something about them. They believe that there is no resurrection. The Sadducees are all about the here and now. Come to the temple, have a good time, spend money, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die, and don't make God too angry, or else he'll bring judgment on us as a people. And so they live according to the idea that this world is basically all there is. They do think that there's a God and that there's a spiritual world, but it's not for humanity, right? They are only focused on power, on family being passed down. If a man had all women as children, he would be furious because he must have an heir. This idea of the family existing and rising in power and wealth was core to the Sadducee way of life. And the Pharisees are butting heads with the Sadducees constantly because the Pharisees believe that there is life after death. They believe that there is going to be reunification of souls in heaven. They believe in the entire Old Testament, and they firmly believe to obey the Torah. And so what the Sadducees do is they create what I think is a hypothetical situation. There was a guy, and he was going to get married, and he died, and she didn't have any children. And so it is, according to the Torah, the law, the rule of the custom was to the next unmarried brother marries that girl and is going to have a child for his brother.
Can't you hear how personal it is, though?
Oh, yeah.
You know, by your rule, Jesus, by your thoughts, this is what needs to happen. And I feel that's kind of the engagement that you have with conversations today. You know, especially if you're talking about to a non-believer about what Jesus, well, your Bible tells me this, so now tell me why that's right or that's wrong. And so I can see a lot of personalness in this conversation, especially to the one that wrote the book, right? You're saying, hey, this is all on you. You created all this, right? Tell me the answer to this one, as if they're going to stump him. I can just see how personal they got with him.
Well, actually, the book of the Bible that deals with this concept most closely is the book of Ruth. And it's, I think, one of the most personal books in the entire Bible. And it's strange for us today to think about this because we do not view the world the same way that ancient peoples did. If your brother died and gave no offspring, there was a desire for his name to not be forgotten, for his place to be held. And so the next brother would have a child and place him in the world as though he is the son of this deceased brother. The other children that would come after that would be his children. And people would know that obviously you're the brother of so-and-so, but there is an honoring of the family that exists together.
Is that just like as a placeholder?
It's not a placeholder. It's almost like a rescue effort. The name must not be lost. You have to. You were born. Our Father wanted you. And there will be a place for you in our family in years to come. And so we're going to do what we... But if that were to happen today in our world, people would be sad, but this wouldn't be at all of interest to anybody,
right,
to make sure that there was a child connected with that name. This is just a very different way that we view the world. So Deuteronomy 25 is going to talk about this. Also Genesis 38 is going to talk about this. But the entire scenario that's constructed here, okay, this guy died, and then this guy died, and then this guy died, all the way down to the seventh son, is designed to make the Pharisees look stupid. Whose wife is she going to be in the resurrection, if that's what's going to happen? And so now, just like before, Jesus either had to say that the Herodians were right and you should carry a coin, or that the Pharisees were right and you should eschew all kinds of idolatry and be pigeonholed into a corner. Either one side would claim him or the other. The same thing happens here. This is another controversy that exists between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now listen to Jesus' answer.
But Jesus answered them, "You are wrong."
That should have been the end right there.
That's the best right there.
I like it. You are wrong.
Because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not God of the dead, but of the living. And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teachings.
You know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. I absolutely love this answer. I just do. He isn't taking a side again, but he is pointing out that both of these sides are misunderstanding the point of what is going on. He gives us this analogy, and he says that instead what's going to happen in that in heaven, you are like the angels in heaven. Because remember, the Sadducees want to know whose wife will she be, as though she's going to be up in heaven, doing his laundry and, operating in the exact same way that they were forcing their wives to operate in this ridiculous patriarchal system that the Sadducees had going on. And that's just going to continue in heaven, and everything will be fine. Whose servant will she be? And Jesus says that has no place in the kingdom of heaven, because she is her own person. She is not going into the kingdom that is yet to come as a servant of anyone or as even the wife of anyone, but as her own soul. And he says that she is going to be, and he is going to be, and each of these imaginary people are going to be like the angels in heaven. Now, in our culture, we have taken this and run with it in a weird direction, because to us in modern America, sex is connected to pleasure, and it is connected to marriage, and that's the point of it. But to the ancient world, having sex was intimately connected with bearing children. We all know that if you have sex, you're going to have a baby. I hope that's not a surprise to anyone out there. But the idea is that in an ancient world, having children was the point. You needed children. You needed a son for your fallen brother. You needed to make sure that their place was secure and their name was not forgotten. You needed to have a quiver full of sons to defend you against this person or that person. It raised you in rank, it raised you in power. And instead, he says that when you are in heaven, things are different. You are not changing. And so the idea here isn't that angels are sexless. It is that the role of marriage is not in view in your eternal destiny. So if you and your wife are bestest of buddies and you love each other, are you going to be together in heaven? I don't know why you would not be. You are still best friends and you need to hang out together. Why? Because you are together. There is a relationship that's established there, and it's going to continue, but not so that you can bear more children. There is an eternalness to what is happening. And so this has kind of become used in the Genesis 6 debate. There is a view, it says the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and behold, they were fair, and they took them wives, and they had children, which the Bible calls Nephilim, or giants. And there is a view of the Bible, it's called the Sethite view, which says, oh, no, this can't be angels, because angels are neither married nor given in marriage. That does not mean that they are unable to have children. It means that they are not supposed to be establishing dynasties and families to continue on forever. Each angel is an eternal being. And so what you have going on here is a difference in the way we talk and the difference in the way that we view family. The Sadducees want Jesus to say, marriage is dumb, thinking of it in this way is dumb, just do what you want as long as you want and all will be well. And the Pharisees are offended by totally different reasons. What Jesus does, though, is he's going to say, marriage is holy. It is an eternal, beautiful, loving, perfect thing. And when you die, life does not continue like normal just in heaven. There is an abundance of change. The wording that I like to use is that of the butterfly. When it emerges from the caterpillar, it doesn't sometimes snack on leaves like it used to when it was a caterpillar. It is a completely new and beautiful, different kind of thing. It doth not yet appear what we shall be, but it's going to be wonderful. The angels in Genesis 6, and they are angels in Genesis 6, are judged. The ancient world had no problem believing that heavenly beings could father children. All of their stories are about this. Like every hero story, every royal story, this is the way that the ancient world thought. But these angels were not to come to earth and create kingdoms and dynasties and children and father themselves. And what they brought about was the Nephilim. It was an evil thing. And so what Jesus is pointing at here is that they are misunderstanding and trying to make something silly that is holy. And what he's going to do is to talk about the way that we talk about God. Look at verse 32. Would you read what it says?
I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching.
He says, so we have this name of God, right? The I am. And he says, I am the God of Jacob. We are used to thinking of that in terms of telling us something about the nature of God. And that's true. But it also tells us something about the nature of Abraham or Adam or you. He is still the God of Abraham. He is still the God of David, of Isaac, of Jacob, of all of the names of the followers who have held him as their God. They still exist. They have not ceased to be. They are moved into not an extenuation of this earthly world, but they have gone higher up and further into the creation of God. And their relationships, marriage relationships, father-son, daughter relationships, are not the same as they were. They have evolved into a deeper, more beautiful and powerful set than what they were here. And so the Sadducees' very question to Jesus is silly. It's kind of like a second grader talking about romance to a couple that's been married for 50 years, giving advice on how to stay together because she and Billy have been dating for 2 weeks now. Jesus is not impressed with this. He says the answer to them. And it says more or less, I am not the God of the dead, but of the living. There is a life after death. And when they heard this, it says they were what?
Astonished.
Astonished at his teaching. They were absolutely flat-footed. No one had ever put this together. No one had ever talked to them about family this way. To them, it was all about power. It was all about children. It was all about rising in esteem. The idea that everyone might have a place with God and called into a relationship that makes this world seem like kindergarten never occurred to any of them. Their minds are a little bit blown after this example, which makes it frustrating for me when people trot out the Sethite view and they just want to say, well, angels can't have children because of this verse. That is not what this verse is talking about.
So if the Sadducees do not believe in the resurrection, what did they believe happened to you when you died?
Well, there is some debate about this. My understanding of it is that they believed you became dust. That was it.
So then your only opportunity to continue to live on would be the children you produce on this earth.
Mm-hmm. And so family and children become extenuation or extensions of yourself. If I am to reach into the next world, it will be through my children and making sure that my name is not forgotten.
In a biological sense, that is true. Like we owe our life to our parents, but they owe their posterity to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the chain that's been, unbroken since creation.
But I
God's
think
breath passing from person to person.
the fallacy in that argument is like, you are not of yourself. You're just of your parents then, especially your father in this situation. So for me to be extended on because I have a child, well, it's not even me to begin with because I am the guy before me and he the guy before him. So this idea that you are your own being is false. So you can't pass on yourself. You can simply pass on whoever started this.
Well, remember
the
Sadducees, why do they have the power that they have? Why do they have the wealth that they have? Their whole claim to power is who their grandfathers were.
Right.
We are the sons of Zadok, and so we are important.
So then to say, well, my personal being is then going to be passed on because I have a son, you're missing the whole point. You
That's
aren't
right.
your personal being. You're Zadok's son or you're whoever's son. And so that I think what Jesus is saying is, don't you understand that you are who you are?
Yeah, and
That's an interesting
it is a
thought.
little bit of both and here, because our culture, I think, recognizes the worth of the individual in a way that the ancient world never did. But I think the ancient world recognizes the importance of family in a way that our world does not.
Sure.
And so what Jesus does, though, here is he moves to the center of the question. Are you saying that your relationship with God only matters while you're here on the earth? No, Abraham is still worshiping God. David is still loyal to God. He is their God. When God told us his name, the I am, it is a statement about himself, but it is also a statement about our relationship with him. I am the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob. there is a continuing of their existence beyond the physical world.
It reminds me of the verse that Paul says to be absent from the body. Is it
Is
Paul?
to be present with the
is
Lord.
to be present with the Lord. It's just you move from one state of being to an eternal being, and there will be no need for, ancestors and generations to come. And in the life that they were living and that we live, there are instructions in Scripture who say, from generation to generation,
That's right.
do these and do this. So we are built as like time-bound creatures in this moment, and they do have a sort of toxic grasp of that idea, but is what he's saying to them is this is all going to cease, and you're going to move into, you're out of the Shadowlands.
Each of them is trying to drag their world and their power into the next life, into the kingdom of heaven, and it won't fit. It's not going to become what they want it to be.
Do you kind of get the feeling as we're getting into chapter 22 of Matthew that the circle is getting like tighter and tighter around him? Like we know the end of the story, and so since you know that, lots of times I like to go back and reread a book after I already know the whole story, because I catch so much then. I'm like, but once you already know the plot, you can focus more on like the details and the setup and all that, and I can feel that like moving towards
I think
his.
this chapter in particular does that for me, just because all of his enemies are listed. And the next day, and then the Pharisees, and so you have this like wolves prowling
I was thinking
around
of like
the edge
White
of him.
Thing, kind of.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So this last group that comes at him is the Pharisees again. They start it and they end it. Let's pick it up in verse 34.
But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to them, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.
This was a popular question that rabbis would often be asked. It goes back to a pair of prophets, or not prophets, but rabbis who were famously asked this question. Hurry up and sum up the whole law in a sentence. Can you be brief? It's much harder to say something with a few words than it is to just go on and on about it. I'm struggling with that today as I'm telling you these things. And so what he does here is he uses a technique that rabbis commonly use called stringing pearls, where he is going to link together two ideas. And the two commandments that he links, one of them is from Deuteronomy chapter 6, which is the Shema, this is 6 verse 5, and Leviticus 19:18. And what he does is he doesn't allow the question to stand on its own. Which is the greatest commandment? Jesus says, these two are one. I must love my God, and because I love my God, I must love those around me. Do you know who doesn't do that? The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, or me, actually. And I don't like that at all. He is telling them, you shall love the Lord your God. This is the commandment. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and prophets. Look at verse 41.
Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? They said to him, The son of David. And he said to them, How is it then that David, in the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. If then David calls him Lord, how is he his son? And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions.
This answer is brilliant because it affects all three groups. It affects the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians, those guys. All three of these are going to be affected by this answer. And it has to do with the Messiah. This is Jesus now asking them a question, and they give kind of a Sunday school answer, David. And so that's the idea. But what it does is he says, who is the Christ? Who is he? And they said, well, he's going to be the son of David. And David is a polarizing character in the ancient world. If you can remember back, David was buried in the city of David in Jerusalem, and he was buried with a whole lot of stuff and money because that was the custom, a way of showing honor. There was one of the Sadducees, one of the great leaders of the movement, who needed money, and he broke into David's tomb and stole the money. And it caused a gigantic scandal at the time. The guy's name was John Hyrcanus. Later on, another man would break into David's tomb, and his name was Herod the Great. And according to Josephus, he was run out with flames of fire that chased him out. That probably didn't happen. But he definitely was moseying around in David's tomb trying to get... Why are they robbing David's tomb if they are honoring David as the source of the Messiah? If family is everything, and you're trying to not make sure your brother's name is forgotten, why are you digging up Grandpa's grave to steal the wristwatch off his corpse? You don't really believe this. You say, well, the Pharisees are different. No, the Pharisees may be the worst of the bunch because the Pharisees are so fast to talk about the son of David, using David to gain political props, but they fail to see Jesus as the son of David. We just went through a whole cycle about that. Remember the blind men who are shouting out, Son of David, have mercy on me. The Pharisees have decided, even if he is the son of David, we have to kill him. Even if he is from God, we have to kill him. This cannot be allowed to happen. They are giving lip service to David, but they don't actually care. What they want is to maintain their own power. And so what Jesus does is he gives a quote from one of the Psalms of David, and it's Psalm 110. Psalm 110, and there are 7 verses to this, which is not an accident. And I want to just take a minute and look at this as we talk through it. So let's go to Psalm 110 as we discuss the implications of Jesus' point.
The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool.
So this is David. He says, the Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. This was understood by the Jewish community to be a messianic psalm. This is talking about the Messiah. And he says, the Lord, that's God, says to my Lord, and this is talking about the Messiah. So if he is the son of David, how can he be greater than David? Remember, we've been talking about the role of family, about how they saw the past as greater than the present. I have position because of who my father was and who his father was, and I'm going to have a place in the kingdom of heaven because of who I'm connected to and who I'm related to. I know this is all weird and I'm doing a poor job explaining it, but it is vital to understanding the argument that Jesus is making. If that's the way it is, David's answer makes no sense. How can the Son be greater than the Father? How can the Messiah be greater than David himself? And it doesn't make sense if their worldview is correct. But you know what does make sense? If it is God in the flesh come through the line that's given to us in the beginning of the book of Matthew. That he was the God of David and is physically thereafter David, that he is the son of Abraham, the son of David, the Christ. This is Matthew's whole point, but it is weird to an American ear because we don't talk this way. Keep reading. Verse 2.
The Lord sends forth from Zion your mighty scepter. Rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people will offer themselves freely on the day of your power in holy garments from the womb of the morning. The dew of your youth will be yours. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
This I can't help but pointing out. The Sadducees' whole point is that they control the Temple Mount because they are the descendants of Zadok, the original high priest, except for what about Melchizedek? The author of Hebrews is going to make a point about this. There were priests before there were priests, if you understand me. There is ancient movement here that your movements of Sadducee, Pharisee, Herodian, they're not as permanent as you think they are. Even today, I have to explain to you what they are. But in the ancient world, they were as common as Republican and Democrat or Labor Party or things that were just known to people. But they're gone. Things that dominate the news cycle aren't going to make the global life-changing impact that people seem to think they are. Every year, we have the most important election of my lifetime. At least it feels that way. That's what I get told all the time. Let's keep reading.
The Lord is at your right hand, and he will shatter kings on the day of his wrath. He will execute judgment among the nations, filling them with corpses. He will shatter chiefs over the wide earth. He will drink from the brook by the way. Therefore, he will lift up his head.
This is an interesting line. There is going to be judgment on the powers of this world, both the heavenly powers and the earthly powers. But look at verse 7. He will drink from the brook by the way. Therefore, he will lift up his head. This idea of lifting up your head is that of not being ashamed. It's the idea of taking courage, dear heart, that idea of I am not broken despite what you think is happening. I am on my way to the cross where I will be lifted up and will draw all men unto myself. But the death that I will die on the cross will not be the ending for me. I will rise again. Remember when David is driven out of Jerusalem, he walks away with his head down across the brook of Kedron, and he returns. Jesus has just done this. He's returned to Jerusalem. He is going to drink from the brook by the way. It gives off to me Psalm 23 vibes. He leads me by still waters. That God is God.
Reminds me of Psalm 3. He says, you, O Lord, are a shield around me, the glory and the lifter of my head.
The lifter up of my head. That's a David psalm and a Messiah psalm. This is the framework that Jesus is bringing into the situation. Which of these groups is representing the kingdom of God? Well, it's not the Pharisees. They're too stuck. They're too stuck on the small things that they can't even picture that there are bigger questions at hand. It's not the Sadducees. They're too focused on their own wealth and power, and they abuse and they hate one another, and it is about doing everything you can to get as much as you can for as long as you can. It's not the Herodians. They've sold themselves to the Roman system, and it's all about, becoming Roman and forsaking their heritage and just reimagining life as part of this bigger empire. What Jesus offers is something beautifully unique. It is diverse and it is acceptable in every time and in every culture because it is not of this world. It is going to feel strange, but it is going to change the places that this message is preached because Jesus is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, mighty and awesome.